Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Greater Life, Greater Impact. I am your host. We have a lot of new people on here today, so I'm just going to do introductions. I'm Janet. I am a quantum healer, and I help take people to the uncharted waters of who they really are for healing and for restoration and for spiritual awakening. Also self-awareness. All those things come with doing your inner work, and that is what I'm here on the planet to do, is to teach people how to do their own inner work. And so I really hope that you get a ton out of today's class. We have a lot to cover. This may even take us a couple of different classes to get through all of the stuff that we got to get through. But today we're talking all about spiritual sovereignty and standing in your own personal power. You have a unique and divine responsibility to know yourself in all ways, and to live true and authentic and with the integrity of who your soul is and where your soul is going and what you're here to do and give. You have a responsibility to know that stuff, to figure out what that is, to clear the blockages out of your way, and then to unapologetically stand in your personal power and do that and be that. So if I typed into the chat, if you want to go look at the chat box at the beginning, if there are any of you on here who are feeling a calling to learn how to do your own inner work through the wonderful tools and techniques of quantum healing, I do believe that the way that I teach quantum healing is, at the core of that, is personal awareness, personal self-awareness, personal sovereignty, learning how to stand in your own personal power. Now, I promised you a little tidbit of my my heart attack story. I have struggled with health challenges most of my adult life. From the time that I was really young, I've always had physical challenges to overcome with my health and with my physical body. It's been a theme through my whole life, and it's not because I did anything wrong necessarily. It's just one of the ways that I seem to learn best. It's one of the ways that I connect with heaven, is by having my physical body torn down to nothing, and then I got to pick myself back up and rebuild. And every single time that I've ever had a severe health crisis or health challenge that met me head on, it was always on the heels of huge spiritual awakening and introspection and self-reflection and self-awareness. And I think that self-awareness is key. In fact, I hope that I iterated this in my notes today. For those of you guys who want a copy of the replay of today's class, you can go get it over at janetthurgood.com/courses, and I will put it up there. I'll put it up there with the handout. You're going to want the handout because there's like pages. Pages we're probably not going to get through it all just in this one little class. So you definitely may want to go over there and grab the replay. So let's jump into this a little bit deeper. Let's talk about what spiritual sovereignty is. I promised you my story. So yes, I did have a full-blown heart attack. I had 100% blockage in the main LAD artery of my heart, the lower anterior, the left anterior descending artery of my heart. Technically, I should not be here. When you experience 100% blockage of that main artery, it usually doesn't end well for people. But we were traveling, my husband and I were traveling on a trip. I had to speak at an energy healing conference, and it happened while we were in Utah. And strangely, the night that it happened, somebody had shared with me a very interesting documentary. And I'm going to reference this documentary. It was, it's called Free Solo. I highly recommend that you go watch it, because the gentleman that is featured in this documentary or this movie exhibits a lot of these characteristics that we're going to talk about today. I have 12 of them that I want to share with you today. And so I recommend, if you're not going to purchase the replay, get out a pencil and a paper, because you're probably going to want to write some of these down. I think that going through these 12 different attributes of what sovereignty and personal power really mean, these are things that I just personally came up with based on my own experience. You may have others. You may come up with some of your own, right? As God teaches you how to stand in your own sovereignty. These are just the ones that I came up with based on my own experiences. But the night that I was laying in bed having a heart attack, somebody shared this documentary with me and I watched it. It's called Free Solo, and it's a story of a gentleman named Alex who climbs the cliff face of one of the most difficult, challenging cliffs to climb. He's a free climber. He's a free solo climber, which means that he climbs without ropes. Now, he didn't just start out climbing without ropes. He practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced and got so familiar with every single teeny little finger hold, hand hold, dance step up that mountain with ropes, to the degree that he could do it with zero fear, to where he had absolute and complete and total confidence in his abilities and confidence in the route that he took. Yes, it is Free Solo. It's on Netflix or YouTube. I think I watched it on YouTube. It was like $3 or something like that. So yes, you can find it probably. I don't know if it's on Netflix, but I know I saw it on YouTube. Probably Amazon Prime has it as well. Okay. All right, just letting more people into the class. Here we go. All right, so some of the concepts that really impressed upon my mind as I was going through what I was going through was interesting, because a lot of what I was experiencing had very much to do with introspection and self-discovery and what's going on inside of me and why is this happening. And so having all of those kinds of questions: what is my body saying to me? What is my body saying about me? So personal spiritual sovereignty and free will and your own personal power, those things are directly connected to the heart. They're directly connected to the solar plexus, which is just below the heart. And it has very much to do with standing on your own 2 feet, being the king or the queen of your own kingdom. And I love that metaphor. I think that metaphor perfectly sums up what spiritual sovereignty is, what personal power is, and what those things mean. So I think maybe the best way to do it, I'm going to go over here. Hopefully I'll be able to still see your comments if you have questions, but I'm going to do a share screen so that I can share with you just a few images and pictures that I came up with that will help me to better go through my notes. Okay, let's hold on a second. There we go. We're going to hit present. Hopefully you can see my screen, and we're just going to jump right on into this. There we go. The 12 principles of sovereignty and personal power. Oh, hold on. I got to let 2 people in. Admit. There we go. All right. Hopefully now we can begin. Principle number 1, let's start there. Sovereign beings don't put their own agenda onto other people, nor do they allow the agenda of others to manipulate them. This is one of the things that I think that was exemplified really well in the documentary Free Solo. So as this gentleman, he was in his early 20s, young man, as he knew that he had this mission to fulfill. He knew that he was designed to climb that rock face, that cliff face, and nothing was going to stand in his way. He knew that he was here to do that, to overcome that challenge. And He did not allow the opinions of other people to be inserted into his mission and his purpose. It for him, in many ways, it was like his identity. It was a big part of his identity. I'm here to do this, and I'm going to do it, and I make no apologies for what I'm doing. And that, to me, that is the epitome of sovereignty. Sorry, getting distracted, having to let people into the chat or into the room. So sovereign beings don't put their own agenda onto other people. It wasn't that he was going around telling everybody else on the planet that they had to climb the cliff face too, and that if they didn't, they were doing life wrong. He just knew that it was what he was supposed to do, and he was not going to allow anybody into his space to talk him out of that, or to try to control the narrative about it, or to try to shame him, or to try to convince him otherwise, right? He knew that was his path, that was his journey, that was what he was here to do. And I loved that. Sovereign beings seek to understand their own mission and their own purpose in life, and they drive towards it fearlessly, unapologetically. They don't apologize for that, and they don't, it's not negotiable. Right? At one point in the movie, Alex's girlfriend wants to know whether or not she can be a part of this equation of how he's making these decisions. And he kindly and profoundly tells her, no, that's not, I'm not going to insert you into that, because those aren't your decisions to make. This is my journey. This is my path. This is who I am. And that's not negotiable with you or with anybody else. Number two, hopefully you can see this picture. It's a picture of a man communing with heaven. And I do believe that this is another aspect or another trait or attribute of people who stand in their own sovereignty. Sovereign beings know deeply and profoundly their connections to deity. We call that being yoked. So there's this high level of trust as well as action. So when you trust God enough to act in alignment with what you receive, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it's terrifying to you, even when it scares the hell out of you, and you still act in alignment with what heaven gives you, with what God gives you, to me, that represents the attributes of what a sovereign being does. And again, I love the imagery of standing as the king or queen of your own kingdom. You don't let other people come in and badger you around. When you, as the king or queen of your own household, even, you don't let strangers come into your home, boss your kids around, and eat your food. Right? There are boundaries, and you set proper parameters to keep that inner household safe. And to me, that inner household is you. It's your identity. It's who you are. You don't negotiate that with other people. So in my mind, I see sovereign beings as being very comfortable in their ability to commune with heaven, to communicate with the divine. This yoking that takes place when they yoke to God, in many cases, it eliminates their need to suffer. They don't go to outside sources to have their needs met. Their needs are met directly by those who walk in the highest light of God, by their interaction with the godly beings, even the gods themselves. I think of one of my favorite hymns is "My shepherd will supply my need." I think the Mormon Tabernacle Choir has sung this a few times, but one of the lines is, "My shepherd will my want supply. Jehovah is his name." And so when a sovereign being sees that there's something that they're lacking or they're needing or wanting or desiring, they go to God first to fill that need. They don't seek to cling to other people in order to fill that need. And oftentimes, you know, in our very codependent culture that we live in our religious cultures and in our society, we're trained to be codependent. We're trained to look outside of ourselves to meet needs basic human needs of feeling valued or cherished or respected or loved or seen or heard. We want those things. We're hardwired to have those things, but often I think that we go about it the wrong way. We go to the wrong places. Let's see, Andrea says, did I miss what triggered the heart attack and what you learned from it? Yeah, we can get more into that. We don't really know what triggered it. We just know that there was 100% blockage in the main LAD artery. I personally believe that as I've done my own introspection, my own looking inside of my own self, I've been through a lot of things in the last several years of my life, and I feel like God is rewiring my ability to look at what love really is and what it isn't. I think, and this goes hand in hand with what we're talking about right now, how we live in a society that's just fraught with codependency. We think that it's our mother's job, our spouse's job, our children's job to gift us love. And the truth of that is they don't owe you anything. It's nice when they can honor you and see you and respect you and love you and reciprocate the love that you give to them. Those are wonderful things, but it's not their job to make sure that those things are filled up in you. It's your job to make sure that you are those things. It's your job to make sure that you can stand as a sovereign, resolute being and find the way to fill your soul with those things, regardless of what's going on outside of you. And that's where this connection to heaven comes into play. Sovereign beings, they know deeply and profoundly who they're connected to and what is their source of those things. So for me personally, we don't know what activated or triggered this heart attack. I do believe that personally, because of many of the spiritual experiences that I've been through on my journey over the last several years, that my heart is literally being rewired. In fact, one of the things that they said kept me alive was something that they call collateral circulation, where your body actually creates new vessels, new pathways, new ways that the extremities of the heart can receive, can get that blood flow to it. So, and that is what happened to me. So to some degree, I was kept alive because my body created new pathways, new vessels, in order to carry that blood and oxygen and supply to where it needed to go. It is what kept me alive. So metaphorically speaking, for me personally, based on what I've been going through over the last couple of years, my spiritual journey, I do feel very much as if God is rewiring my heart and my ability to be sovereign, my ability to tap in to my higher self, and my ability to see love in a totally different light, to let go of the old codependent ways and to now embrace new ways. So for right now, as we kind of stay on this picture, I want everybody to take a moment. Well, actually, I'm going to go. No, we'll stay out here. I want everybody to just go inside of their own body. Take your attention, take your awareness, drop down into your own. Sherry says, I'm so grateful you're still here. Oh, me too. Thank you for saying that. That's really sweet. Everybody drop into your own body for a minute right now. As we talked about earlier, the main attributes of sovereignty show themselves the most in the heart center and in the solar plexus. So the heart center in the center of your rib cage, but also in the solar plexus just below the sternum. So I want you to take your attention and your awareness and go inside your body. Drop down below your heart. Drop your awareness, your attention, your focus. Go inside of your body and start to breathe. Breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. And as you breathe out, go ahead and just invite your body to let go of any tension, any tightness, any resistance, any rigidity. Let's just go deep inside of your soul for a minute. I want you to look inside of your soul for a minute. And breathe into that space. And I want you to think about where in my life, as a king or queen of my own kingdom, where in my life am I being stomped on? Where in my life do I feel stuck? Where in my life am I not getting what I need? Having my needs met, having myself be fulfilled. Where in my life? What does that look like? What are the scenarios? But keep your focus inside your body as you're processing this. And I want you to really pay attention to, what is that stuckness? What does that feel like? That discomfort feel like inside of your body? And where do you notice the discomfort of your stuckness or your emptiness or your hopelessness? Where are you feeling that? What does it feel like? Is it heavy? Is it sharp? Does it feel like sadness? Does it feel like anger? Does it feel like rejection? What is it? So you get very clear on what's going on inside of you. That is the stuff, that gunk that's showing up that feels heavier than you. That is not you. Those are the parts and pieces that are stuck to you for sure, based on programming, based on trauma and drama, but that is not you. So you are responsible for that. You are responsible for those feelings that show up inside of your body. It doesn't mean that you're to blame, but it does mean that you have a responsibility for what you're going to do with that energy and that information, so that you can return yourself to that lighter, fluffier, more empowered feeling inside of your body. And we're going to get to that, but I really want you to just sit with this heaviness for a minute. Stay with it. Breathe through it. Let your body process it. And as we get closer to the end of this message, maybe you'll notice a bit of a shift. So let's go to the next one. Principle number 3 is that sovereign beings do not cling. They don't cling to things, objects, materials, people. They are not emotionally, mentally, physically attached to anything in a needy way. Attachments are not necessary to one who can stand in their own autonomy and meet their own individual needs through their relationship with God. So a sovereign being doesn't do this. They don't go clinging to other people so that they can feel better about themselves. They stand on their own 2 feet, unapologetically, non-negotiably, standing sovereign and resolute and with autonomy, which means freedom, free will, standing, knowing who they are, what they're about, what they're here to do, and they don't have this neediness about them. They know that their needs are met inherently by God through their connection to their higher self. And so I want you to look at these pictures, and I want you to think about, in your life, where in your life are you being needy to something or to someone else? Maybe you feel that you need success in your business or your career in order to feel better about yourself. Maybe you don't feel safe in your life and you need to cling to certain ideologies or to people or to belief systems, whatever it might be. So what are you clinging to? And are you willing to let go so that that other person or even yourself can stand on your own 2 feet as a resolute being with autonomy, being yoked to God and your higher self rather than to someone or something? So I want you to think about that. Attachments are not necessary to one who can stand in their own autonomy and meet their own individual needs through their relationship with God. They don't experience loss. So if that attachment gets severed, there is no feeling of loss. There is only a feeling of, okay, there was something that was learned. They don't play the role of the victim. They don't run to others looking for advice and clinging to that advice. They don't seek for love from anywhere else but within. They don't go around pining or longing for connection. And again, like I go through these things too, just like all of you do. It's part of the human experience. And a big part of our healing journey involves learning how to let go of the things that we have once clung to for safety and for connection, that feeling of connection. I'll tell you this though, when two sovereign, autonomous, healthy, spiritually healthy beings who know who they are, who know how to connect to God, when two people like that come together, then they're not attached to each other, they're not clinging to each other, but there's a powerful connection, and they know there is a connection, and they can share that connection with each other in a powerful way that does not infringe upon identity and personal sovereignty. Michelle says, when I am in my sovereignty, I feel more willing to surrender and let things be what they are, rather than trying to control people and situations. Good job. Thank you for being aware of that. I think all of us have had moments or glimpses of this true principle, but it's healthy for us to become aware of what are we clinging to, and where do we need to learn how to let go and let others be who they are, rather than needing others to be something that they aren't. Sovereign beings don't play the role of the victim. They don't run to others looking for advice or seeking love or pining or longing for a connection. Healthy connections happen only after they have learned how to fill their own inner well and satisfy their own inner longings. Then and only then they are capable of forming healthy connections with others. Here's a really good example of that. The other day, as I was kind of just resting, recovering from my adventures over the last week, I remember having this interesting awareness that the Divine Mother was connecting with me, speaking to me, giving me impressions and thoughts and feelings. And I said to her, in my mind, I said, "Oh, Mother, I miss you so much. Thank you for being here. I miss you so much." And her response to me was, "Why? Why do you pine for me? Why do you long for me? I'm right here. I've only ever been here. I'm always here. I don't ever go anywhere. I'm always with you. So what is the point in pining and longing when you always have me?" Okay, here's another. Okay, so Andrea says, I think interdependence is very different than codependence. Don't you think we are all interdependent? I love that you just used that word, Andrea. Yes, I'm going to bring that up actually in a future principle that we're going to add to this list. But yes, I do believe that interdependence is not even close to codependence. Is being needy in a way that you need somebody to show up a certain way in order for you to feel whole and complete. That's codependence. And codependence is clinging to somebody or something in order for you to feel whole and complete. Interdependence is when sovereign beings who are equally yoked to God, in their own, standing in their own power, can come together and connect with each other in a powerful way and work together and synchronize their work together. That is interdependence. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with having healthy connections. But when those connections turn into neediness and wantingness and clinginess, that's when it gets out of balance. Yes. Yeah. Andrea says, yes, I agree with that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for bringing that up. I love this concept of interdependence. I think that's what many of us like to talk about what Zion might look like. I believe that Zion happens first inside of an individual's heart. Zion is within. And then when people who have achieved that state of enlightenment of Zion within, then they start having connections and communications and sharing love with one another in a state of interdependence, but not clinginess or neediness. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's move on. Number 4, sovereign beings are neutral. They're not in a hurry. They move forward at their own pace. They don't freak out about timelines or potential threats. They don't freak out about even death or loss or the potential for death, because they know death isn't real. They know that they are infinite beings. They have mastered the art of neutrality. And, you know, neutrality only happens when a person walks in sovereignty, carrying this eternal, infinite perspective in their hearts and their minds. They recognize that there is no threat to an infinite being. And so they can walk through the minefield of life. Bombs are going off all around them, and they can constantly be in this state of grace, this state of peace, like it is what it is, and I'm okay. I'm at peace because I know that I'm infinite. What do I have to worry about? There is nothing that can threaten an infinite being, nothing. And so as a result of that, they can remain neutral and with a clear mind and a clear head and operate in chaotic moments, you know, when destruction or terror or chaos is going on all around them. They can stay in this place of clear-mindedness. They can think through what is the next right step to do in this moment, and they don't get flustered because they're still connected to their higher selves. They're still connected to God. There is no threat to them. If they leave this mortal plane, then so be it, but they know that it's not the end of them. I think that's a profound way to live your life. And you can get to that state by clearing out all the clutter and the gunk that goes on inside of you. When you start feeling those feelings of what's keeping me from being me, what is holding me back, who is stomping all over my personal power and my free will and my autonomy, and why am I allowing that to take place, and why am I allowing that to happen? Sovereign beings just be. What they do, the doing part of their life, is just a byproduct of their beingness. So they operate frequently in the stillness of the I am. Emergencies rarely rattle them. And when emergencies or chaos or confusion or terror arises in their external world, their I am in that state of stillness is what guides them through it calmly, and they can get through to the other side without being an absolute wreck. I know people like this. I really hope that I personally am developing this attribute in my own life, because that is inherently who I want to become, who I want to be. I think that people who act this way more often in their lives than not are people who really do know that they know who they are. They know who they are to God. They know who they are to themselves, and they can just operate in that, and there is no threat because they're infinite. Okay. Dinah says, I'm working on letting go through the grieving process. It's been difficult. Yes, grieving is, I think, one of the most difficult processes to come through, because you feel like you've lost something, right? You deeply feel like you've lost something. But if you can let go of that notion that there is such thing as loss, if you can tap into your higher self and recognize that you are everything that you think you need, then you recognize there is no such thing as loss. Loss is not real. Death is not real. And so then you can let go. Heather says, oh my gosh, someone else talks about interdependence. I feel Christ had been teaching me this for about 8 years now. It is a higher law of sorts to being self-sufficient. Yeah, none of us is designed to be an island. It's not about being alone. Autonomy isn't about standing all alone by yourself, for sure. But it is, autonomy and sovereignty is definitely about being able to, if you have to. If you're in a situation where you must stand alone because no one else is willing to stand with you, then you can, and it's okay. But interdependence is knowing that we are hardwired to have soul to soul connections with others. That's how love flows through you. And love cannot really flow through you if it's not flowing from you into you from somewhere else. And typically it should flow from God into you and then spill out and be projected towards others. That's interdependence. Okay, what are we on? 5, I think. Let me see. Yep. Here we go. This is number 5, has to do with your ability to navigate. Oh, hold on, one more. We've got one more comment that I gotta get through. Is it Shauna? I think it is Shauna. Powell says, I have learned autonomy to a much higher degree through the last few years with our world. Yes, don't you think? Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Don't you think that this whole situation with COVID and those who are seeking to manipulate and control the human population, like, good luck with that. Those who are seeking to do that are perpetuating as much fear as they can onto us. But the more that they try that, the more that they do it, the more we start to exercise our muscles of autonomy and sovereignty. And we realize, wow, I'm much more powerful than I've been led to believe. And I can pull up my bootstraps and my big girl pants, and I can stand on my own 2 feet, regardless of what fear is being projected out into the world. And that leads us to this next principle. Sovereign beings listen intently to their own inner compass. They listen to their own inner GPS and they use it to navigate through life. They are accustomed to communicating with heaven through the divine power and through the fire of the Holy Spirit. So not only can they discern what their heart is leading them to do, they can also discern whether or not that's in alignment with God's highest will for them. They can discern those things, and they fearlessly stand, sometimes alone, where they're at, and they move forward in autonomy, acting upon what they're given according to their own inner compass. So they're accustomed to communicating with heaven. This navigation isn't influenced by their ego. It's definitely driven very much by the higher self. When the ego, your mind and the way that people persuade you and the way that you've been conditioned to believe, when you let that govern the navigating, it's like letting a 2-year-old drive a car down the freeway. They're not capable. Your ego is not capable. It doesn't have the intelligence. It doesn't have the maturity to navigate you through life. It can balance your checkbook and drive your car down the road for sure, but your intelligent mind, your egoic mind, I should say, it should not be allowed to be in the driver's seat of where you stand in regards to who you are. What else do I have here? It's about being driven by the heart and not the head. It's about listening to that inner calling that you feel that is guiding you to do something great. Nobody has the right to diminish that in you. And if you diminish that in someone else, then shame on you. No one has the right to diminish your inner GPS, your higher self's navigational system. You go where you're designed to go. It's one of the things that I really loved about this movie, Free Solo, is that as this young boy he's determined to climb this mountain, free soloing it with no ropes. And it is literally a straight up and down cliff face. So there are parts on the climb where he's literally hanging on by 2 fingers, and his feet are barely gripping the straight up and down cliff face of the wall. Right? He knows that his life hangs in the balance. He's not willing to negotiate the fact that he knows his mission and his purpose is to climb the damn mountain. And so he's going to do it because he knows he's being driven by his higher self to do it. And it's interesting too, as they were filming the documentary, it wasn't about, oh, you got to wait till we get all these cameras in position, and you've got to wait till the perfect lighting, and you've got to wait on us. No. It was not. It was like Alex had it in his heart and in his mind that this was his journey. His life depended on how he did the journey. And he wasn't going to bring anybody else into the narrative of how this was going to look. It was like he stood in his own little bubble. He maneuvered around, did his thing, and the rest of the world, their job was to meet him there, was to move into position to meet him where he was. He didn't kowtow to anybody else's schedule or anybody else's narrative. Yes, go ahead, Charisse.
Just to back up a bit, what you were saying before about our following our hearts and our inner GPS system, just on an anatomy note, we actually do have brain tissue in our hearts. We have the same neurological system, or very similar in our heart as we do our brain, with like something like 40,000 neurons type of thing. Like it's pretty fascinating to see that we actually can think with our heart. We do have that ability. It is in us. It is part of our physiology. It's quite cool. So that's just a little add-on.
That is quite cool. I've read that before, and I do believe that. I do believe that our heart maybe even is more of a brain than our brain is a brain. They both definitely serve a unique purpose. I think that the heart is definitely more connected to the soul, to the spirit, to the divine intelligence. I think the brain is more the connecting of the functionality of the physical body. And definitely the brain is an organ, and it's used to analyze and compare data. And it's also used to keep the functioning of your physical human body alive. And so we have to be careful, because if we think that we are the contents of the brain, then we're going to start analyzing and comparing our own identities, and that can be really super dangerous. Okay, we've got Dinah. Go ahead.
Have you guys ever heard of the heart being the true mind? That's what I've been learning.
Yes.
That the heart is a true mind.
Yes. Well, and I also believe that the heart and the mind, when they're in sync, when they're connected to one another and they're both on the same page, then that just elevates the empowerment of the individual. It's not that I don't believe they're separate, but yeah, I believe that the heart is another mind, so to speak. So
yeah, they're not necessarily separate, but if we live in our brain and we focus on this reality, we can't see what's really going on in our spiritual self.
Yes.
Yeah. That's why they say the true mind is the heart, because it houses where your soul and spiritual energy is. Yeah. All of that.
Yes. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's true. Let's go on to number 6. This is cute. Sovereign beings stand firmly in their own I am, unapologetic. Who they are is not negotiable. They define these things ahead of time, and then they let the world adjust to who they are and where they stand. They present this to the world, and the world adjusts to meet them there. This is what healthy boundaries look like. You stand unapologetically in the truth of your own I am, and you let the world know who you are so that they have an understanding of where your healthy boundaries are. Thought that was a good one. Here's another one. Number 7, sovereign beings focus on the what, and they let the gods worry about the how things will turn out. Your job is to focus on what is it that you desire, where are you going, what is it that you're seeking to create, to have, to be, to do, and then you move in that direction, and you let the gods worry about how those things come to fruition. It doesn't mean that you don't do anything. It doesn't mean that there's no doing involved. It just means that you don't have to stress about how it's going to come together for the greater good, for your good, because you don't see the bigger picture. You don't have all of the infinite possibilities at your fingertips like God does. And so you focus on the what, you let God focus on the how. It will all turn out. Your daily actions are driven by passion and purpose. Sovereign beings have no need to run around manipulating the world through brute force or controlling other people. Their actions are governed by their inner drive. Just like what Dinah said, it's your actions are governed by where the heart is leading you to go, and you just go. Okay, the next one, number 8. Sovereign beings do their best to eliminate fear from their lives so that they can do the hard things with the greatest amount of confidence. You know, in the documentary Free Solo, when they asked Alex if he was ever afraid to climb this mountain face, this straight up rock of granite with no ropes and no belays and no safety net, they said, were you scared? Were there places where you were scared? And he said, no. He said there wasn't, because he had climbed that mountain probably hundreds of times. He had climbed it so many times with the ropes. And he had climbed certain sections, like he would go to certain sections and climb, like do the dance, the footholds and the finger holds and everything. He would do them over and over and over. And then he'd do them free soloing it over and over and over to eliminate the places on the mountain that felt scary to him. And that was how he eliminated all fear, so that he could then feel ready on the morning when he woke up. He was ready to actually do the climb. And he did it like a dance, like a perfect dance, like clockwork. And there was no fear in him. He just went out and did it because he knew that he could. It wasn't like he was randomly throwing himself into a place of danger and then hoping for the best. He had planned this out. He had had a strategy that he felt comfortable with. Nobody else was, like, he did have a mentor. He had people that mentored him and that he would let in to those conversations, but he was very, very careful about who he let in to that personal space as he was navigating through this accomplishment. I watched this movie 3 times. And I even took notes. I was like, that dude is sovereign. He knows who he is. He doesn't make an apology. Like, they even asked, would you back down from this for a girl? And he's like, no, I no. I would never let a woman get in the way of my climbing. Because he knows this is a big part of himself. It's a big part of who he is. And if he let a woman talk him out of being who he is, then where's the sovereignty in that? Then you're just living half of yourself just to appease someone else. And I don't believe that autonomous beings do that. I don't believe that godly beings do that. They don't diminish who they are just to satisfy someone else's agenda. Okay. So I loved that. I loved this concept of he could literally do this very terrifying, fearful thing. A lot of other rock climbers that were with him on this journey, that were the cameramen, and the people that were kind of instigating and helping with the movie of it, the filming of it all, they were terrified for him. But that was because they hadn't gone through the process that he went through to eliminate fear so that he could then move forward in the direction of where he knew his soul was supposed to be going. I love this movie. I think the metaphor of it all is so inspiring for those of us who desire autonomy and sovereignty in our own mountains. We all have our own mountains to climb. We all have our own purpose and passion and mission to fill on this earth. And I love that he did what he did to exemplify and to show what sovereignty looks like. Number 7, sovereign beings focus on, oh, I think we already did that. This is number 8. Nope, this is number 9. Sovereign beings choose actively and they don't wait to be acted upon. Thus the many doors here, the many doors of possibility. They don't wait for somebody to tell them which door to go into that will take them through another rabbit hole. They choose based on 100% of the fullness of the agency that's upon them. They know they have free will. They recognize that they're being governed by their own agency, and no one tells them what to do, not even God. Because at some point, God is not looking for a bunch of puppets that he can control and manipulate. God wants you to learn to lean on him for sure. But at some point in your progression, your spiritual progression, you're going to let go and you're going to become the God, right? At some point, you're going to become that spiritually ascended. As ascended as God is, so will you be. And that means autonomy and sovereignty, being an agent unto yourself that operates in the fullness of agency and free will. That's where God's leading you. He doesn't want codependent beings just hanging all over him. Them, I should say. I think the gods are all godly beings. Okay, so a sovereign being doesn't necessarily need, they act in alignment with what the inner higher self wants. It's like what Dinah said, letting the heart lead. They don't need advice or direction from outside people. And, once in a while, it's nice to have a mentor. Once in a while, it's nice to get feedback from other people and to hear what their thoughts are. But at the end of the day, a sovereign person takes it all into perspective, uses what they feel they can use and throws out the rest and still does what their heart is calling them to do. Looks like we have another comment. So yeah, preparation eliminates fear. Correct. Yes. Isn't that masterful? Preparation, doing it over and over and over, becoming the master. It's a lot like skiing too. The first time flying down the mountain at 100 miles an hour can be really terrifying if you don't know what you're doing and you haven't eliminated all of the obstacles, right? You don't know how to navigate down a mountain, and you have no business flying down a mountain at 100 miles an hour because you haven't taken the time to practice and prepare yourself and eliminate the need for fear. But I guarantee you, the next time down the mountain, you hopefully have developed a few more skills so that you can eliminate the need to be fearful. I think there was one more thing I wanted to bring out about, oh yeah, every choice a sovereign being makes is the right choice. They don't worry about whether or not, is this the right choice? Am I going through the right door? I don't know if I'm supposed to. I don't know if I'm supposed to go through the red door or the green door, or somebody help me make this decision. They don't do that, because a sovereign being knows that the choice they make is being led by their higher self, which is also one with God. So every choice they make is the right choice. And then there is no need for regret or fear or worry or wondering. Just make the choice. Let your higher self lead. Their choices are aligned with God, and their choices are made out of self-love and not selfishness. That's the big determining factor. I make my choices in my life because I love myself. And because I love myself to this degree, I can also love you to that same level. So their choices are made out of self-love, not selfishness. Number 10. I love this imagery. Can't you just feel the freedom in this picture? Can't you just feel the freedom of this individual who has the whole world in front of them and choices to make, and they know that whichever choice they make is going to be the right one, and no one is swaying them, no one is pushing them, no one is pulling them, no one is arguing with them. They stand in the integrity of their own soul. So sovereign beings don't seek to manage other people. They seek for the autonomy, the freedom, and the free will of all beings, including their own. Sovereign beings also don't allow others to micromanage them. They move about unapologetically. They do not place unhealthy expectations on others and then shower them with guilt if they don't meet those standards. They are completely devoid of falsely judging other people's hearts because they're more focused on where they're going, and they let others do the same. You do you, and I love you. You do you, and I love you. That's really what it's about. Okay, we've got a couple more comments in here. Oh, one more. Andrea says, I get frustrated when people are so focused on climbing the mountain that they will leave their woman and pregnant wife home to climb the mountain, then die on the mountain and left a baby and a mother alone because of his drive. We must weigh out how our goals intertwine with our soul contracts here on earth. I saw a film about a man who climbed Everest and was talking to his wife in delivery as he died climbing the mountain. Why? Yeah. Well, I agree with you in the fact that we do have to weigh out, there are consequences to every choice that we make and to every action. But if a human being feels that that is their mission and their purpose to come here to do that, then nobody has the right to impede upon that mission and that purpose. That if you feel called to do something, no one has the right to hold you back from that calling, whether or not they're pregnant or not. Like, no one has the right to hold them back, and they don't have the right to hold you back. But yes, I hear what you're saying, Andrea, in that these decisions and these choices do get to be carefully weighed out, and we have to be the ones who are left with, is this in alignment with the integrity of my soul? And if it isn't in alignment with the integrity of my soul, then why? Is somebody controlling the narrative? Heather says you can love them when they do them, but it's not a connecting experience to be on different tracks due to you doing you and them doing their thing, especially for a married couple. Well, that might be true. Yes, and I see where you're coming from. You can live and value each other, but not feel connected. Yes. It's a quandary. I think in many instances, it is a quandary, because still at the end of the day, married or not, no one has the right to diminish your purpose, your passion, your truth, your identity, your mission. No one has that right. We often sometimes confuse codependency with love. I'm gonna not do my mission and purpose because it puts me at risk and because it's too dangerous. because my family doesn't want me to do it. There's some codependency there. And so I think there's a fine line, and every individual soul, to the core of their soul, has to decide what that fine line is. Where does the boundary get crossed over into, I need you to show up a certain way for me to be safe, for me to be happy, for me to be fulfilled. If the companionship, the couple relationship comes before a person's individual relationship with God, then there's an imbalance there. We oftentimes put all this focus and emphasis on the companionship, the couple, the marriage is the most important thing. And while it is an important thing to have companionship, to have sovereignty and autonomy in the midst of lovely oneness connection, those things are wonderful and they're important. But if any of that gets in the way of who you are as an identity and your connection to God, and it sways you away from that number one connection, then that's out of balance. Okay, so let me answer this one question or one comment in the chat. Thank you for these ideas. We need to be careful that our sovereignty doesn't become selfishness. Agreed, 100%, Andrea. I think that's where discernment comes in. You perfectly iterated that. Thank you for bringing that into the equation. Because yes, there does have to be a level of making decisions as to, is this a selfish decision? Or is this me speaking up, standing up, showing up? You know, it's one thing to say, to hell with the rest of you, I'm doing my thing. It's a whole nother thing to say, I feel that I have a calling to do this thing or whatever it is, and asking for your loved ones to support you, asking for that support and establishing a healthy boundary there, right? So yeah, there is a fine line. You got to weigh that out, and you got to really want the consequences of what your decision is. Go ahead, Charisse.
I think I talk with my clients about this all the time. So because we have a tendency to try and please others, a lot of, especially if you're empathic, we're the peacemakers. We're the ones that try to smooth things over. We're the ones that try to, make it better for other people, which can kind of allow others, like the toxic individuals or the narcissistic individuals, to kind of take over. But one thing that you can do is actually just to stand and just ask yourself, is what I'm doing pleasing God? Those really are only two people in this world that you have to please, is God and yourself. Yeah. So if you are pleasing God, if you are doing something that pleases God or the deity, whatever you want to call God, you're going to be, usually it falls in line with looking after your family and taking care of each other. You know, is it pleasing to God to have children, have a family? Yes, of course it is. Is it pleasing to God to follow my dreams and my desires? Yes, of course it is. But you need to, what are the priorities right now at this time in your life, at this stage in your life? Is it looking after your children? Yes, it is. So I think just even taking a step back and saying, okay, am I pleasing myself first, or am I pleasing God first? So if you put deity first, you're going to be directed and you're going to be shown exactly what needs to be done. Yeah. And what is the priority? If you have babies and children, little children, that's your priority right now at this stage in your life. Mm-hmm. Later on, when your children are older, that might be the time for you to follow and become more of a sovereign being. It's hard to be a sovereign being when you're nursing babies.
It is.
Because you got little things attached to you, right? Yeah. I think just keeping in retrospect that there's a time and season for all things. And yes, you will be achieving your goals and your desires and your dreams and your heart's desires. But this is a part of your plan and your process that sometimes Sometimes your plan includes having children, looking after them, nurturing them, raising them to be sovereign beings as well too, and to perpetuate that into the world, and to create an even bigger collective consciousness of sovereign beings, because that is the way that we are directing this world. This is the newer world that we're moving into, is sovereignty,
Yeah.
spiritual sovereignty. And so you standing in your sovereignty, pleasing God by nursing those babies, even though they're so dependent on you, you are helping perpetuate the sovereignty of the earth and of the world.
Yes. I love that.
The end.
Oh no, the beginning. That's beautifully said. And yes, and it's that simple. It's just a matter of asking that question, is this pleasing to God? And God will direct the timing of it all, and the outflow of what your life is designed to look like in different stages. Dinah, did you have a comment as well? Maybe not. I saw your comment in the chat. Hold on, let me go see if I can find it again. I'm glad I joined today. I'm reminded of who I am and who I'm meant to be. I've been giving peace. Yes, wonderful. Thank you for both of those comments. That really brings it all into perspective, which was actually how I wanted to finish this off. So let's go to the last slide. This is number 12. Is this number 12? I think so. Oh, this is 11, sorry. Sovereign beings know what their innate physical, mental, spiritual needs are, and they seek to satisfy those needs rather than wait for somebody else to do it. Again, there's this timing factor that comes in, as Charisse was talking about, that dance has to be done intricately and intimately with the divine, and they will direct. Sovereign beings are fiercely focused on making sure that their needs get filled so that they can be the best version of themselves for the people around them. So if you notice that you're getting depleted, and you notice that it's time to recharge and refill, and you need to replenish so that you can be a better version of yourself for your loved ones, you find the ways necessary to make that happen. I remember when I had six little kids underfoot in my home, and there were lots of opportunities to be depleted and need to refill and recharge. And so I would reach out to family and friends and neighbors, and oftentimes we would do a trade. I would say, hey, I'll take your children for the day on Tuesday if you will watch my children for the day on Wednesday, so that I can have a day to do my thing to recharge my batteries. So it's just a matter of paying attention. You are responsible for what's going on inside of you. And if the chaos and the difficulties of life begin to accumulate inside of your body, you have responsibility to take some action, to do something about that, to replenish your soul, to lift and fill and edify yourself so that you can come back into the fight and stand back up again. The last one is very similar to what Charisse was talking about in regards to putting your relationship with God first. A sovereign being knows who they are to God. They know where they stand with God, and they know whether or not their actions are pleasing to God. A person who is spiritually sovereign might sometimes find it difficult to discern the difference between the voice of God and their own inner voice sometimes, because they sound so much the same, because that relationship is so equally yoked. That takes time to develop that. But because there is a level of oneness that molds your voice and God's voice together to become one, it's almost as if God's voice is your voice and vice versa. They sound the same because they are so interconnected and interdependent. This oneness of heart and mind allows a sovereign person to freely and openly love all beings in a godly way without the need for it to be reciprocated. They begin to recognize that they are all the love that they think they need, and that yoking to the divine keeps them connected to that steady flow of love and feeds their soul. This actually could have been the first. The first shall be last and the last shall be first. This could have been the first principle of sovereignty. Is where do you stand with God? The gods and the goddesses in your life, where do you stand with God? Who are you to God? Who is God to you? And do you hear the voice of the divine in your being? And does it sound very similar to your own? So these are the 12 principles that I decided to talk about today. I'm sure there are many, many more that I missed, many more that maybe you will come up with as you step out in your own personal journey. These are just the ones that were weighing on my heart this week, literally on my heart this week, as I've been healing and recouping and recovering from an opportunity to really go deep into my own inner self and do some introspection and reflection. I'm going to stop the screen share. There we go. I appreciate you all for being on here today. I appreciate your comments and your questions, your concerns, the things that you shared, the things that you added. I'm sure there's much more that we could add. We could probably talk for more hours about this principle of sovereignty and personal power, but I believe that each of us as human beings on this planet has an inner responsibility to know ourselves in all ways, to know. Can you please read them over again? Oh, it's like 3 pages long. I don't know if I could read them all over again. But you can get the handout if you go to janetthurga.com/courses. I'll put it there. It'll be there by the end of today. And you can go get the replay of today's video and then have the handout there for y'all. Just some final thoughts as we wrap this up today. I do feel that as human beings, it behooves us. It's a wonderful journey to start to discover who we are, and also to ask the questions, who is God? Who is God to me? What does that look like? What does that relationship look like? And when you begin to develop that relationship and it becomes very partnered and paired, and you start learning how to stand on your own 2 feet with God, being yoked to God, desiring to please God in every way, shape, or form, then you start to become like God. And I do believe that it is in our birthright. It's hardwired in our DNA to spiritually ascend to godhood, to become as the gods are, because they once were where we are. Thank you guys for being here. This was a wonderful conversation, a great discussion. I love it. I think that each and every one of these 12 principles could be broken down into a full hour's class, and we might just do that. I've been really pondering on this week. Michelle says, I love this topic. I've thought about this a lot the last few years. Thank you for sharing. Yes. So your job then as individuals is, don't take my word for it. These are just some of my thoughts, my feelings. I am not the receptacle of guidance and truth for you. God is. So look at the list, decide which ones resonate most with you, and do your own self audit, your own spiritual sovereignty audit. Where do you stand? How do you stand on your own 2 feet? What does your inner voice sound like and look like? What is your mission? What is your purpose? What is your passion? What does the timing look like? So these are all wonderful questions to start asking as we start becoming more self-aware. Again, I'm going to end here with, we are running our Greater Life, Greater Impact course. I'm going to type it into the chat. If any of you are interested in learning how to do some of these things, how to become more self-aware, how to get rid of some of those things that are blocking you from your own personal power, please reach out to me and let me know that you're interested in maybe taking this journey of becoming a quantum healer, or learning about spiritual sovereignty, learning about self-awareness, and also learning how you can become a coach in these tools and teachings so that you can help guide other people through the process as well. I'm going to put it in the chat. It's called, if you just go to Greater Life, greaterimpact.com, you'll be able to take a little training there that will kind of walk you through what our program is about. We teach these tools and principles to those who want to learn them, and also to those who would like to potentially run a business doing life skills coaching. So if that sounds like you and that resonates with you, and that's something that you've always wanted to do or you see yourself doing, go to that website, greaterlifegreaterimpact.com, and watch the training. And then you can schedule a live Zoom call with me and we can talk about it. All right, everybody, have a blessed rest of your day. Thank you for being on here. Thanks for participating, and we'll talk to you next Tuesday. Take care. Bye.